I do. Hire her, right? John, I was going to show you. We're guessing it, I want to so mine. Number. Little calls. Oh, okay.
All right, everybody, we'll get the meeting called to order for the pension plan group. I think everybody should have an agenda in front of them. There's just a couple of things that we want to remind everybody. We know there's a lot of attention within this group. This is, nobody here is decision makers in terms of what comes out of here is not going to become law. We're making a recommendation to the legislature, the LCPR, and hopefully we can come to a consensus. Everybody's got their own interest. We understand that. We want to hear everybody. We hope that we can model this almost like a negotiation, back and forth, and try to come up with the best possible. This is not a negotiation, but that's what we're going to try to model it as, right? So just to be clear, the people at the table that have got name placards that are part of this group are the people that talk. People on the outside, unless you're invited to talk, we just ask that you not take part in it. Deal with people that you're sitting at the representing that are sitting at this table. Going forward, members are going to be able to watch group meeting on YouTube under the LCPR's YouTube channel. And then if you are a member or invited participant of the group and wish to attend the meeting in person, just contact Alina at least 24 hours in advance. We want to have, we're very limited on time, so we want to keep the discussion going and give everybody time to talk. And Ed kind of said this the last time, and kind of going through everything now. We're going to be tight to get this done before the next legislative session, so we really need to make wide use of our time. As co-chairs, I will be the chair for today, and then Ann most likely will be the chair for the next time. We'll just do that, so it's just clear who's running the meeting for that day. So we have a lot of presentations to get going, so I think we'll, unless there's something somebody. Yes,
Mr. Chair, thank you. So I was hoping to get into asking a question pertaining to the public notice, whether this should have a public notice on the website of some type. And secondly, look, I mean, the reality is somewhat of a small room for the group that we have. Secondly, it doesn't give much room for people in the event that they want to not participate, but attend. Is there a possibility of moving this over to one of the hearing rooms at the Capitol? One, it would make it much more transparent. We may be able to put it on live stream. Secondly, I think I don't think it's advantageous if people need to call ahead of time to try to get in to see this. Reserve a spot, whatever we're calling it. I think to have it in a hearing room at the Capitol would provide for ample space for people to actually partake in it, so to speak.
Okay, I'm gonna Susan. Right.
Yeah, so going into these work groups, we have taken the position that, closed meeting where just the members of the group will be most effective. That people will feel inhibited about what they say, I think, if it's an open meeting. We have since then, work groups, and we went into, we did a lot of research, talked with health research and a council. The determination was made that we do need to have this as an open meeting. But that only means that we have to let people watch it on YouTube or something like that. We don't have to allow any testimony. We don't allow non-members to speak. We don't have to have a big enough room for the universe to be here. So that is ultimately up to the chair, co-chairs, as to whether we, do something different to allow more participation. But there is some concern with the work group that you need to have a free flow of conversation, and the more people watching or in the room with you, the less likely that is to occur.
I will have a conversation with and adjusted. I think that is that fair?
Yes, and let me just say on the issue of transparency, I think it's really important. I believe the legislature is going to look for our recommendations, and for us to have recommendations in behind, I don't want to say behind closed doors. I don't think it's very transparent. Let me just say that. So I would err on the side of being more transparent in the process.
And we'll discuss the larger meeting. We'll have an answer for the next meeting. So again, we're doing, sorry, is there anything else anybody else has?
I was just gonna mention, it's been very difficult. We've been trying to schedule other types of meetings, like investment advisory council, and those sorts of things in the hearing rooms at the Capitol or at the Senate building, and it's been very difficult to get rooms. So for whatever reason, it's hard to get a room right now. I just throw that out there because you may run into some challenges.
We appreciate that. All right, anything else?
Mr. Chair, I guess I would like to weigh in to counter to what Ed said. I more agree with Susan. I would prefer that we are transparent by making it viewable, but I do think it's going to be harder to get work done if we expand the size of the room and the amount of people in it. I think it's just going to complicate the discussion dynamic. I really do. I think this committee is already big enough.
Big.
I'm not, Mr. Chair, yes, I'm not asking to expand the committee.
No, I know. But just having a bigger room and all those people, it does do something to you mentally, focused wise, and my opinion.
We'll meet, talk, and give everybody an answer. All right, so a reminder, the presentations on perspectives and priorities, 15 to 20 minutes per group. We want these questions to be addressed. Who does your stakeholders group represent? What are important, noteworthy perspectives of the group that should be considered as we develop the details of the new pension? What are the highest priorities and considerations for your stakeholder group? What information do you need to make a decision about new pension plans in order to reach an agreed upon recommendation to provide the commission what is ideal path and plan the work group should follow going forward? All right, so the first one will be the what we're doing?
Well, I think that on the order of
On this.
agenda was, yeah,
Oh.
it's some of the stakeholders.
Yes, all right, so probation officers. And that'll be Eric Johnson, Andy Joe Lieber, Devin Bruce, Ed, Jim Mortensen, Latona Reeves, Dave Deal, and Nicole.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Nicole Kern, I'll be presenting and Dr. Lieberg will be assisting.
Okay.
Will the PowerPoint be up or shall I?
I think we're working on it.
Okay, excellent. Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Kern and I'm the Director of Corrections in Morrison County. I'm also the MACAC representative, which is the Minnesota Association of Community Corrections Act Counties. I'm here before you today representing over 1,300 probation officers and corrections agents in all 87 counties. We supervise over 97,000 people in the community, in their homes, and at their employment. We answer our phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime that law enforcement needs us. As you can see from the crowd outside and the large group, I'm sure that's online today, everyone's very excited and appreciative of this work. We hope you understand that their energy is them appreciating that this is moving forward, that we're looking at this and hoping to find a resolution for all of us. And Dr. Tammy Jo Liebert will speak to slide 2.
Okay, and this is slide 2, just so you know. So I am Tammy Jo Liebert. I am the director in Candy, Ohio County. I am here representing the Minnesota Association or Minnesota Corrections Association. I'm also part of MACAC. But also we are as a group representing, as Nicole said, 97,000 or 1,314 probation officers across the state. This map shows a overview of probation in the state of Minnesota. We represent all 87 counties in the state of Minnesota. We supervise from juveniles to misdemeanors to felony offenders to supervised release. We are a part of the continuum of public safety, starting all the way at the beginning from bail studies, all the way to the end of supervision, which includes life sentence reviews. We are dealing with individuals, justice-involved individuals who have committed misdemeanor offenses all the way to sex offenses and murders. We are an essential part of the continuum of public safety. If we are not there at the beginning and at the end, there's many pieces of that continuum that's going to follow, from what happens in the court system, in the jails, from the arrest, from also the biggest part of long-term community safety. A huge part of what we do is addressing the long-term community safety of helping victims, making sure that we have less victims out in the community, making sure that we help people change their behaviors so less crime occurs. So we want to make sure that everybody sees that we're the different areas. We have CCA, CTO, and Department of Corrections. We're representing all of those types of probation officers across the state. Oh, and then, yeah, and just also remember, we have probation officers at all ages. We're going to talk about that at different points of the fact that the average probation officer is 44 years of age. But we have probation officers of all ages, which I'm going to actually touch on a little bit more later on in our presentation. But this is an unusual thing going forward because that's not what used to happen.
So the next slide breaks down our 3 groups of probation supervision or community committees. MCA is a membership committee. That's what Tammy was just referencing. And then we have MACPO, which is the County Probation Officer Delivery System, and MACAC. We all supervise people who are on probation, some pretrial services, supervised release, otherwise known as parole. And we also see them, as Tammy Jo said, from the beginning at a bail study to pretrial services and all the way through. We also stand with our unions. We, part of our group is the Teamsters, MAPE, and Council 5 AFSCME. We proudly stand beside them. We understand that They are doing the work and they are supporting our employees and our people just as well as we are. And we all hope to move forward with a retirement plan. As you've heard in the past with our legislative testimony, and this committee has recognized, which we really appreciate, our jobs are difficult and dangerous. We know that the last thing we want to do right now is tell you 50 stories about all the dangerous situations we've faced. We can, at any time that you want to hear them, we gladly will, but we're not going to do that today. I think instead, we want you to understand that supervisors and directors have caseloads and work in the field. I think people were quite surprised to hear that. I have been a drug court agent, a sex offender agent. I have helped with doing searches of drug homes. So this is all just within the last year or two. We fill in, we cover caseloads if they're not being filled. And in small rural jurisdictions, there's directors who carry a caseload all of the time. The aging probation population is something that Tammy's going to touch on, but I'm also going to say that with Rule of 90 ending, we're entering a new territory. We've had a few people who have worked over the age of 60, but they had an option to leave. And we have an option, it's just costly at this point. And so we're hoping to come to a resolution that allows us not to have people who are in their mid to later 60s doing home visits and doing searches of drug homes and down crickety stairs. Probation is an important part of the public safety continuum. Corrections agents and probation officers supervise the same people that law enforcement arrest, the same people that jailers supervise in custody, and that corrections officers oversee in prison. But we do it in the community, and the majority of the time we meet with our clients alone, one-on-one. We're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to law enforcement, and we do home visits for our high-risk clients on nights and weekends. I come from a rural jurisdiction, and I might have an agent out doing a home visit at later hours of the night, and there's 2 deputies on duty in our entire county, and she's out there alone. So I want everyone to understand that this is a statewide perspective. We want to look at what happens everywhere.
We also wanted to also bring up and point out that Minnesota's 66 years of age retirement does not really compare to other states. Probation officers across the United States have very different probation officer retirement systems. You can see here, we just put a couple up, but typically probation officers have the exact same job as Minnesota probation officers. We supervise the same type of clients, but the probation officer system in all of the other states surrounding us completely have very different retirement programs. How this really can impact us in a couple different ways is we are going into this in the next couple of years of how probation officers are running into the same problem all of law enforcement is, running into issues of how do we recruit. For when I started, I was actually just talking about it today. There was 76 other people who applied for a little tiny little part-time job in the middle of nowhere. 76 people applied for it. Today, for positions I have, I'm lucky if I get 3 applicants. As we go through this, if we do not come up with a solution to this problem, we are going to start seeing more and more of our applicants go to these other states because they're going to see this. North Dakota, Iowa, and Wisconsin have better options. This is going to affect our recruitment. This is going to be an impact, and it rightfully should, because actually when somebody asked me what the biggest regret I have in my career is the fact that I didn't stay in North Dakota when I could have.
Probation officer and pension plan priorities. What do we want? We want acknowledgement of past service. We do not want to leave the majority of our members behind. The average probation officers / corrections agent, and just so everyone knows, those titles are kind of interchangeable. I have corrections agents in my office. Eric might have probation officers in his. They're not owned by anyone. It's just what terminology we use. So we want to make sure we don't leave anyone behind. And we also want to recognize that we're bridging a gap between those eligible for Rule of 90 and any new plan. And we're hoping that that gap isn't steep and painful. We want to find a way to make it an easy transition. We also want an immediate effective date, because who doesn't? what information do we need? We need an understanding of combined service credit. We need to know what that's going to look like. What would a retirement look like for an individual who spent more time in the old plan, like me, versus the new plan, like a newer hire? And what transitions have been put into place when creating other plans? I'd love to hear what that looks like, what it looked like for other plans, recent ones and older ones, and what can we take from those to make ours as smooth as possible? We also are very supportive of if there are subcommittees that need to go into depth on various subjects if needed. We are available. We are more than willing. You've seen the energy outside, and I hope you see the energy in this room as well. We are here to help, and we want to keep this moving forward.
Other information, we'll go back to other information for the work group to know about. One of the things about Rule 90 that we wanted to talk about. This is an unusual experiment for us. I talked about the fact that we'll pretend we won't say how old I am, but when I started, I just barely missed the Rule of 90. This is relevant because of the fact that everybody I started with actually had the opportunity to retire. So the people I started at that earlier age. So I watched all the people in my office retire at 58, 59. Nobody worked past the age of 60 in my office when I started. We don't know what it means to require probation officers to work and do home visits and go out and do those home visits and work with the individuals they're working with and do COG groups. We haven't seen that before. This is an experiment that we don't know what that means for workman's comp. We don't know what that means when they're going to go down those rickety stairs, go into hoarders' houses, do those COG visits, because we haven't had probation officers that have worked in those fields doing those jobs in the past. They have always had the opportunity to retire. Have we had select probation officers who've chosen to work past those ages? We've had some, because there's always some people that have chosen to do that. But we haven't had that requirement or that point where it costs so much to stay past that, that everybody did. And so that's one of the reasons we want to really consider the fact that there's a lot of impact of requiring or making it so cost prohibitive that people are not going to be able to look at retirement beyond that age, and why this is such an important thing to not just consider the age of 60 or the retirement plan, but also the age of the past credit service, because this is the age group you're talking about. These are the people that are going to be looking at this going forward, actually right now. They're the ones that are doing the work right now. They're the people that might not be able to, after 40 years of service or 35 years of service, we're going to be able to look at them and say, well, thank you for your service after 35 years, but you can't do the job anymore because you can't go out and do home visits. So see ya. We don't want to see you doing your job anymore, and you're just not welcome here anymore. What are we going to do with that group of people? Because sometimes home visits, going out in the field, doing those things, the requirements of being a probation officer might not just be possible for everybody at the age of 63, 64, 65. Probation officers, by the way, have been talking about this since I started. This is the third study we've tried. This is something we've been asking about since Rule 90 went away, when people started going, wait a minute, what happened here? This is not new. We've been asking and asking, and this is the farthest we've gotten, and we're so grateful that we are here today and having these conversations at this table. As you saw, everybody with the thank yous as we walked in the door, we are grateful to have this conversation and grateful that we're getting to this point. And just then a reminder, Minnesota has the 11th lowest incarceration rate in the country. And there's a lot of reason for this. Part of that is the fact of cost. Part of that is we know that we can do better on probation than in incarceration, and helping people change lives for their families, for what's going on, for less child protection, for what's happening in for people in general. But it is reliant on what probation officers do out in that field. If we don't have probation officers doing that really good work out there, we are not going to be able to have that low incarceration rate. We're going to see more people incarcerated. We're going to have a higher cost for the counties, for the state, for what's happening in our communities. We're going to have more victims, and we're going to have higher recidivism rates. Our continuum of public safety is dependent on our probation officers, and we really need to do right by them. Oh, and just the last line is just a reminder, a lot of people just don't understand probation. And they just don't understand that we supervise every level of supervision, all the way from, they think probation officers are just supervising low-risk offenders. Probation officers actually mostly supervise high-risk offenders coming into the community. That's sex offenders, murderers, people coming out at all levels of supervision.
So in conclusion, Tammy and I stand here to present on behalf of all the probation agents and probation officers and corrections agents statewide, members of the 3 unions, to thank you for being a part of this committee and for helping us to come to a good resolution, something that hopefully can work for the majority of people. As Tammy stated, there are 97,000 people currently on supervision in the state, which includes all 87 counties. We have MRRA coming from the Department of Corrections this next fall. That also means higher numbers of people being released from prison. Our numbers will rise. We are hopeful that we can come to a resolution. We are part of the public safety continuum, and we love the work that we do, or we wouldn't continue to do it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next to the 911 communicators, Arlene.
And Tony.
And Tony.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I did not follow the rubric exactly for this assignment, but I think I got to the heart of what we want to say is our important factors here. So first of all, good morning to members of the working group and the advisors of this working group. And thank you for your time and service to this very important matter. Today, I do speak on behalf of Minnesota's public safety telecommunicators. That's the 911 professionals who serve every day as the first line of response in emergencies across our state. The document we've distributed outlines our collective position and the requests we respectfully bring forward. My remarks today will walk you through the heart of that message. First, we ask for a statutory definition of public safety telecommunicator that accurately reflects our role. We've included language in the document that was adapted from Minnesota Statute 403.02 and aligned it with federal recognition of the public safety telecommunicators as first responders. This isn't just about titles, it's about accurately acknowledging the work that is done, the responsibility carried, and the service delivered under intense and critical circumstances. And as you see in the document, this suggested statutory change has been previously vetted through legislative working groups and nearly became law in 2022. If the public safety omnibus bill was signed, that definition would already be in place. Second, we ask that no qualifying PSAP be left behind. Agencies such as Metro Transit, Minnesota Airport, and the University of Minnesota operate full service emergency communication centers. Their teams meet the standards, face the same demands, and serve the same commitment, and they should be included in a pension coverage plan that emerges from this working group. And I wanted to put that in here because I wasn't sure that when the actuary study was done, that these folks were included. Because they're a little different than the ones that are serviced by the counties under sheriff's office or under municipalities directly, and we just wanted to make sure that we weren't forgotten. Third, we proposed a benefit structure that mirrors the correction plan in fairness and in function. It includes an unreduced retirement age of 55, a reduced retirement at 50, and a 2.2% benefit multiplier, and protection for disability survivors and post-retirement cost of living adjustments. These are not extraordinary requests. They're simple, equitable, and in line with other public safety professionals. And fourth, it is essential. We are asking for retroactive coverage for those who have already performed qualifying service, but may not have enough years left in the careers to vest in a new plan, similar to what we just heard from probation. Some have given 25, even 30 years of service. They've done the job. They've held the line. It's time to make sure that their contributions are counted. We understand the question of retroactivity is always a concern, but let me be clear, this request has limited financial impact. Due to the size and turnover of our workforce, PARA and MSRS do not yet know the numbers, yet I worked in this field for over 30 years, and most do not make it past 8 years. Most PSTs retire with modest benefits, and the number who would qualify under this proposal is relatively small. And there is precedent in 2025, again, as corrections message mentioned, there is precedence. Legislatures acted to enhance teacher pensions and made those changes retroactive. We've seen similar action for Metro Transit Police, state fire marshals, and corrections. And finally, I just want to add that there's been EMS dispatchers at the Hennepin Healthcare have been part of police and fire fund for decades. So this is not new. It's not radical. It's what's right. So we respectfully urge the group to adopt the proposed statutory definition for public safety telecommunicators, ensure all qualifying PSAPs and agencies are included, recommend the proposed benefit structure, and provide retroactive credit. We're just asking for people to be treated fairly. This is our opportunity to fix an inequity that's stood for far too long, and to affirm to those who answered the call when no one else would, deserve the same respect and retirement security as those they support in the field. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have police and fire. I believe that is going to be Jim Mortensen. Are you online?
He was going to be late. He had an employee retirement.
Okay.
And, but he thought he would be here within the half an hour, but we're just.
All right, we'll go by and go back to him. So then we'll go to the forensic scientist. And who's gonna? You got it? All right.
Yes.
Josh is gonna do it.
Hi, I'm Josh Von Hogue. I'm a forensic scientist too with the Minneapolis Police Department Forensic Services Division. Here with my colleague Gabriel Krasinski, also works at Minneapolis, and Scott Ford from the Midwest Regional Forensic Laboratory. We realize that we're kind of a odd group out here in terms of what the work group is for, but hopefully you'll kind of understand based on what we're trying to talk about, like why we believe our Legion of Forensic Scientists professionals should be included in these pension plans or pension plans. So we are here today on behalf of forensic scientists, professionals across the state of Minnesota, who are at the city, county, and state levels. Our stakeholder group represents a dedicated and highly skilled community of scientists, supervisors, and forensic professionals who are essential to public safety in Minnesota. These individuals play a vital role in the criminal justice system by providing objective, science-based information to law enforcement agencies and the courts in the investigation and prosecution of crimes. The scope of forensic science is wide-ranging and specialized. Professionals in this field serve in areas such as crime scene response and evidence processing, firearms and tool marks examination, DNA analysis, fingerprint examination, toxicology, and more. Supervisors and other adjacent roles such as quality assurance managers, technical leaders, and laboratory managers and directors are equally essential. Many of these individuals began their careers as bench-level forensic scientists, and today they provide critical oversight and uphold scientific integrity and accreditation standards, manage staff and operations, and ensure the highest level of forensic results. Despite the importance of their work, there are fewer than 350 forensic scientists and related professionals across Minnesota. The population is significantly smaller compared to these other public safety roles, such as the 911 telecommunicators and probation officers. Forensic science professionals are similarly employed by and work for public law enforcement agencies that offer retirement either through PARA or MSRS. These agencies include the Minneapolis Police Department Forensic Services Division, the St. Paul Police Department Forensic Services Lab, the Hennepin County Crime Laboratory, and the Midwest Regional Forensic Laboratory, as well as the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Our stakeholder group represents these dedicated and highly skilled community of scientists, supervisors, and other forensic science professionals who are essential to public safety in Minnesota. Their work, whether it be on the front lines or in leadership, are essential to the accurate, impartial, and timely application of science in the pursuit of justice. As the work group develops the details of new pension plans, there are several important and overlooked perspectives we feel that are related to forensic science professionals that deserve thoughtful consideration. One being the high-stakes, high-stress nature of the work. Forensic scientists and supervisors operate in high-pressure environments where the findings can directly influence the outcome of criminal cases. There is an ever-present expectation of perfection. Mistakes are not merely undesirable, but they can result in the miscarriage of justice, wrongful convictions, and/or dangerous individuals remaining at large. Additionally, forensic professionals frequently handle emotionally distressing material such as evidence from homicides, sexual assaults, and crimes against children. The cumulative impact of an unwavering demand for absolute accuracy, in addition to the same emotional and physiological toll, mirrored by other public safety professionals that urges an enhanced retirement benefit for the forensic science community. A civilian role with public safety impact. Although most forensic professionals are classified as civilians, they oftentimes work alongside sworn personnel performing the exact same tasks, including processing crime scenes, managing hazardous evidence, and working irregular hours, including being on call. The disparity in drastic pension benefits creates an inequity within the workplace and undermines the morale among dedicated civilian staff who bear equally equivalent risks and responsibilities to their sworn colleagues. With long training periods and delayed workforce entry, forensic scientists are highly educated, typically holding advanced degrees and undergoing extensive technical training, including continuous trainings to maintain certifications in their respective sector. Sometimes these training periods can be as long as 2 years. As a result, many enter the profession in their late 20s or early 30s, and given the demands and stressors of the job, a retirement age of 65 or older is not feasible, nor reflective of the realities of a full career in this field. Recruitment and retention challenges. Due to federal agencies and neighboring states offering more favorable retirement options, Minnesota faces significant challenges in attracting and retaining qualified forensic science professionals. Providing an unreduced retirement benefit of 60 and adjusting contribution rates would strengthen recruitment and retention efforts. Without these changes, the state risks falling behind the competitive labor market. Without these changes, the state and especially the city and county agencies risk falling behind in a competitive labor market as well. Promotion doesn't eliminate pressure. Forensic scientists, directors, managers, supervisors, technical leaders, and quality assurance managers are not only held accountable for the work of others, but they have the added weight of maintaining accreditation standards and ensuring legal defensibility of laboratory work, where even a minor oversight can have serious consequences, including wrongful convictions, case dismissals, or loss of public trust. The expectation of perfection remains and the pressure remains high. These individuals typically started as a bench-level forensic scientist and now take on the added responsibilities and stress. Therefore, these leadership roles should be fully included in any or new modified pension plans. Size of the workforce. With fewer than 350 forensic scientists and supervisors employed statewide, the fiscal impact of expanding pension eligibility is minimal, we feel. The addition of these professionals strengthens only these new potential plans, and the return on investment through improved morale, fairness, and workforce stability would be substantial.
Oh, that's me. One of our top priorities is ensuring that all relevant forensic job classifications are included in the pension plan. When we initially explored pension plan changes, PARA advised that defining eligibility by job classifications rather than specific duties is preferred and accepted. However, it is critical that the classification list comprehensively covers all forensic disciplines and related roles. Unlike more straightforward public safety categories such as 911 telecommunicators or probation officers, our field encompasses a wide range of specialized positions and job titles, making this a complex but essential consideration. For example, throughout the various agencies listed, job titles include but are not limited to forensic scientist, sheriff's forensic scientist, sheriff's forensic scientist lead, digital forensic specialist, forensic scientist 3, quality assurance specialist, supervisor, forensic chemist, sheriff's forensic science supervisor, crime lab quality assurance administrator. I think you get the sense of what we're talking about. All of these titles fall under the broad umbrella of forensic science in Minnesota. Another high priority for our group is determining the appropriate reduced and unreduced retirement benefit ages. Much like police officers, emergency medical technicians, and firefighters, forensic scientists are regularly exposed to toxic substances, biohazards, and dangerous conditions. They process scenes for hours or even days in extreme conditions, and laboratory personnel encounter hazardous and carcinogenic chemicals while performing complex testing procedures and may spend long hours on their feet processing evidence. Beyond the physical strain, forensic professionals face significant emotional and psychological challenges. They regularly handle evidence from traumatic events such as homicides, suicides, child abuse, sexual assault, and mass casualty incidents. The cumulative exposure to these scenes and materials can have long-lasting mental health effects. A 2021 study in the Journal of Forensic Science even showed that, quote, field-based forensic scientists experience traumatic stress levels comparable to first responders and law enforcement. Many forensic scientists experience burnout, secondary trauma, and even post-traumatic stress disorder from the nature of what we witness and process. A 2016 study from the Department of Justice on conditions affecting forensic scientists' workplace stress found that, quote, approximately 60% of scientists agreed that they were emotionally drained by their work. In addition, 57.1% feel frustrated by their job, while over 60% indicated that they were under a lot of pressure and were tense or uptight at work. This emotional toll is often unseen, but it's very real, and it further contributes to the difficulty of remaining in the profession until the current unreduced retirement age of 66. The stresses of the job, physical, mental, and emotional, lead many forensic scientists to leave the field before retirement age, even if they still have it into the work. Simply put, this job can be stressful, hazardous, strenuous, arduous, and dangerous. Although it is a highly rewarding career, few who start in the field are able to finish their careers under current retirement structures. It's imperative that these realities are considered in the design of any new pension plan. As an example, the turnover rates of employees can also create additional stress, workload, and burden on current staff, and even result in a loss of work output. If a smaller agency, for example, employs 20 forensic scientists, each earning approximately $80,000 a year, a turnover rate of 15%, only which would equate to about 3 employees a year, would cost the agency roughly $250,000, not including rent benefits. Turnover costs also include additional costs to the organization such as cost of attracting, interviewing replacements, administration, severance pay, unemployment compensation, testing, travel, moving expenses, etc. We strongly believe that all current employee forensic scientists, supervisors, and adjacent roles should be afforded full inclusion in any new pension plan, retroactively to their original date of eligible service. This is not only a matter of fairness, but also a basic equity, and recognition. Many of these professionals spend years, often decades, serving under the same intense demands, public safety responsibilities, and personal sacrifices as their peers in other pension eligible roles, out of the dedication to public service and scientific integrity. Failing to include staff and their past service would create 2 classes of employees doing the same work, but receiving vastly different retirement outcomes. Retroactive inclusion corrects a long-standing oversight, sends a strong message of support from the state, and helps retain institutional knowledge by offering experienced staff a path forward with a fair retirement.
As more of a specific trade group with limited knowledge and experience of these working groups, as we all are just currently working in the field right now, we do not have any necessarily recommended path or belief that should be followed to achieve the recommendation of the commission, but the expertise lies with most of you here who have probably worked on work groups before. And we hope that the information we provided you today will be taken into serious consideration and a well-balanced pension plan can be created to reflect the realities of the work that we all perform as in forensic science. Thank you.
Go to the public employees. Employers, sorry, public employees.
I'll start us off. Nathan Jess with the Minnesota County Association. I'm joined by my colleagues Matt Hilger, Association of Minnesota Counties, and all work for the Minnesota cities. Just kind of with some context about the organizations we represent. We're membership organizations in the League and Associations case, both founded over 100 years ago, with elected officials serving as board members. AMC represents all 87 Minnesota counties. The League represents over 840 of Minnesota's 850 plus cities. MICA is the newbie of the bunch. We were just founded in 1971. We represent 17 of Minnesota's 87 counties, essentially the largest counties in Minnesota after Hennepin. So when we're thinking about this or other policy issues and providing input, we're thinking about how to balance the need of fiscal stability and state mandated services and costs, along with the employee requests and what works best for our public employees, given limited budgets and purchasing power. And just, I think it's important context to have the current strains and constraints that a lot of local governments are facing when it comes to budgets. In 2025, the legislature cost shifts onto counties for consideration in numerous areas. and future ones are also going to be considered as a result of recent federal law changes. In 2025, final preliminary or final county levies increased by a statewide average higher than any year since 2000. In Minnesota, and may increase by more in 2026, which would be the 6th year in a row that levies increased at a higher percentage than at a higher percentage from the previous year. So I just say that to provide some important context around our position on issues like this, but we're also employers that really value our relationships with our employees. So we're always looking for ideas that balance those employee needs and our own capacity. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hilbert.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Matt. I'm so sorry for my loss of voice. I have 2 kids under 4, and so I'm dealing with a mysterious loss of my voice all of a sudden, and I apologize for that. I hope everyone can hear me, including those online and watching. I work for the Association of Minnesota Counties, so that organization represents all of Minnesota's 87 counties. We're governed by our board of directors and our policy committees, which are elected county officials, so elected county commissioners. And this issue, if you go to the next slide. Next slide. Thank you. This issue is not new for us in terms of hearing your concerns. Particularly, I want to give a shout out to Dar because we spent summer of 2021, I believe, together with Lisa and Susan as well on this issue about telecommunicators. So while the probation plan is definitely not new, as Dr. Lieber said, this is the 3rd study. The newest one that we've kind of had in a public setting and a work group setting was the telecommunicators. And as Nathan pointed out, we do represent employers. So it's a naturally different position than employee groups. We come here sincerely committed to listening and trying to engage fruitfully in pushing something that makes sense forward. But we'll give you today our perspectives from the employer side. Our perspectives are mixed, and I say that with a smile because I think that's good. If it was just the first column that I'm going to read, it would I'd be a little bit nervous about the road ahead of us. But we'll get to the support angle here too. The first concerns are around funding sustainability. So I think one, I think we're very blessed to be managed in the state of Minnesota with really wonderful and competent pension plan directors who will have this front of mind as well. It's that whatever we put forward has to be fiduciarily sound. With sound assessments, financial assessments, and assumptions, which is critical as well. The second is equity across public roles. And this one is a concern that's going to linger with us even if we come to a conclusion. Someone said that earlier today, all the presentations were fantastic. There was one that said a high stake, high stress, I believe. And I agree with that and all of the professions that have and cities and counties are not alone in that. We're really proud to employ and work alongside a litany of public service jobs that are really high stress jobs. A group that wasn't included in this was discussed, social service workers, child protection workers, case studies, youth, juvenile delinquency, etc., mental health we provide as well. All of these things have really high stress occupations and sometimes physical interactions. If you've ever gone along for a child protection case, it is heart-wrenching. It is terrible. It is really tough. Public health. Public works actually has some of our highest workers' comp rates from public works physical injuries. Election officials, really unfortunate that we have to add them to this mix, but they've been under new, unfound, historic stresses in their occupations with threats, etc., assaults occasionally. And last but not least, even assessors. I was just coming from an assessor conference. It's as fun as you would think it would be. The folks who assess your properties. We're required by statute once every 5 years to go out in person to a home and actually assess. We are seeing physical assaults rise. They've been there. They've been luckily diminishing case, but we've seen people that either have guns pulled on them or actually physically assaulted or sexually harassed in that occupation. This is all to say that these stories don't go above and beyond and say this is harder than what you do. It's just the line of work that we are in as public entities and as you and public employees is not easy. The retention paradox. So this is something that I was writing down the notes of Tammy Joe was saying, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Iowa. And kind of like this, what came first? What works better? Does actually promoting early retirement mean that we're actually going to have a better workforce, or does it just mean that we're rushing folks out the door first? And so that's a question that some of our folks will ask. And I'm open. I don't know if there's studies or if there's anything that we can pull from North Dakota, Wisconsin, or Iowa that actually shows the opposite. I think that's a question worth asking. And then the last one of the concerns that we hear, and again, these are commissioners, we've had para come in front of our commissioners I think 4 years running every single year at our annual conference to talk about this issue. Our commissioners have said, hey, what we hear from HR perspective and from our employee groups is that salary and take home pay are the highest priority. And so that's something that we want to just discuss too. Certainly, we respect the fact that the groups here, whether it's the unions who represent the employees or others, you represent the employees. So we're here to listen to you, but we're also hearing that take home pay and paycheck preservation, meaning that we're not spending 15, 17, 20% of out of paycheck pay is really important, especially for those younger folks who have rising costs. And I'll tell you, as 1 and 2 toddlers, daycare is even more expensive than mortgages. And that's a real cost. And something that I think we should also be considering when we get to that intergenerational discussion, particularly. Now the support, on with the good thing. I think in our, it's when Dar did a great job of advocating for the telecommunicators, we had that work group. We had a senator turned Commissioner Carla Bigham from Washington County, who said, guys, this is the right thing to do. These are folks who are public safety related. They are helping us. They're the first to be called. We got to do this. And she would come and speak to our group and try to make that case. We don't have a universal position in support. We have differing positions, but we do have several members who are, yes, these are public safety, particularly probation and telecommunicators. These are public safety adjacent roles, and it makes sense to explore something. And then, of course, I think kudos, I've been talking telecommunicators, but kudos to the probation group too, because I think there was a lot of interest in us selfishly and self-interestedly of, hey, this is one of those groups we already have sympathy for. We're already under huge budget constraints, but this group put together something thoughtful in terms of plan proposal that is employee funded. And we have members of our delegation who say, well, who are we to step in their way if it's employee funded? So that's something that we'll want to talk about as things proceed as well.
Now, I'm Owen Worth. I'm with the League of Minnesota Cities. We represent 841 of Minnesota's 856 cities. And similar to the county, the Association of Minnesota Counties, our board of directors is made up of elected officials from across the state and some mayors, councilors, and other public officials representing cities. So, and I'll just be providing a brief perspective on this, brief city perspective on this issue. So just to say, in general, cities would experience less direct fiscal impact from a new pension plan than our county or even our state counterparts. No cities directly employ probation officers, and only a handful from our last count, 5 cities do directly employ 911 telecommunicators. And many cities have their emergency dispatch operations run through the county level. First, I do want to acknowledge that cities value the crucial role that 911 telecommunicators play in our city emergency operations. They play an important part in keeping residents safe and ensuring timely responses from our first responders. But in general, cities share many of the concerns that have been raised by the counties, but just on a smaller scale. Particularly, changes to duty disability benefits for any part of the workforce can have a long-term fiscal impact for city budgets. That this will be an important aspect of a potential new pension plan from a city perspective, and the work group should fully consider any long-term liability risk that may arise, altering the existing disability benefits for those employees that are currently a part of the para-general plan. Next, issues filling vacancies caused by earlier retirement age. As my colleague, Mr. Hilgard mentioned, with the retention paradox, the work group should fully examine whether an early retirement age will result in an equalizing incentive for more people to take on a position where cities are currently experiencing a difficult time filling job openings. So weighing the reduction of the workforce from an early retirement age with that also serving as an incentive to more people applying for these positions should be fully considered. Next is just the need for careful policy design to ensure the long-term health of pension plans offered to public employees. So city pension, just like counties, city pensions are an important component of employee recruitment and retention. So cities prioritize ensuring that there is ongoing stable funding and health for any potential pension plan, and fully weigh any potential impact on the para-general plan moving to the group.
Yeah, so Mr. Work was just kind of talking about the para-general plan and the health of it. You know, one of our priorities as county is also going to be ensuring that any plan doesn't negatively impact that existing para-general funding. that plan's currently on the path towards full funding by 2036, I believe, and we want to make sure not to jeopardize that. Decreasing the stability of that plan by a significant amount would be bad for employers and employees alike. If we can, we want to make sure that plan stays on a safe ground. When it comes to contribution funding, one thing we really did appreciate about the legislation that was in consideration this session for probation officers was that it was driven by an employee-driven contribution. Given the kind of fiscal instability that I was talking about that counties are facing right now, that really does help mitigate risk from a budgeting perspective. And then intergenerational equity, this is always going to be a conversation anytime we're talking about pension policy, but prioritizing that does help ensure that contribution rates for recent or future hires aren't artificially higher than they would be otherwise, and that the benefits line up with contributions made. We also think that prioritizing intergenerational equity helps with the long-term stability of plans. And just the last one I wanted to touch on here, which is a little bit more in the weeds, but just providing a clear definition of not just the eligible employees, but also the purpose of the benefit for them, and making it clear why the state decided to go this route for those employees specifically. Would make it simpler to have conversations in future years about pension policy, about and kind of have an official record of here's the reasons why the state came to this decision for this group of employees. We think that's something that would be beneficial. There is precedent for this with the correctional plan. And I also just think that it's something that, in this room or even at the legislature next year, if something moves forward, they may have a good recollection and a good idea of why they're doing what they're doing, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road, it really does help to have an idea and have something in statute that says, oh, this is why this was done for this group of employees, would be really helpful. I'll turn it back to Mr. Hilkevich.
I think I got the last two. I'll go through this one fairly quick. Questions that we think would be helpful for the group or just from our own perspective. What are we talking when it comes to qualifications? Several folks noted that there's definitely different job titles, caseload interaction versus years of service or list of duties. How do we want to determine that? How should we determine that? Should differing turnover rates inform plan design? I think it was brought up during the first meeting, but I think telecommunicators have vastly higher turnover rates in their profession. Probation. What does that mean for plan funding? What does that mean for plan assumptions? Those are certain things that we just like to learn a little bit more of. Should participation in these plans be mandatory, especially for the higher turnover plans? If you're entering, maybe not even knowing right off the bat that I might only serve 2, 3, 4 years in this, are there viable options, especially if you're not going to see that benefit, assuming you don't get vested or fully vested? That's a question that we should ask too. How do we ensure that both benefit recipients and active employees see values? That's the bridging the gap question, as Nicole thoughtfully pointed out before. Would a sub-plan pair has already given me the eyes? Would a sub-plan be cheaper or a better alternative or not? Just diving deep into that, even if we do as a pension policy think that different separate pension plans are important. And there's some additional questions on financial risk, benchmarks for comparables, and education for current active and prospective volunteers. So in full transparency, and I really appreciate both Scott and ability to have the groups present and just be transparent with each other about what our ideal paths forward are. I've been taking notes on everyone else's. This is our list right here for recommended plan path forward. Limiting it to telecommunicators, probation with clear statutory intent for public safety adjacent roles. I think that's important. The statutory citation that we've been using for corrections is 352.90. So there is some legislative intent. I know some legislators are fearful of legislative intent, but for this, we would suggest it. Contributions, employee funded, and the employer share at fair general rates set in statute. And as Nathan alluded to, not only is it just high levy rates, we're dealing with societal issues that are not lapsing. I was talking to Ramsey County just the other day with the federal cuts, with Medicaid cuts, SNAP, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars. And the options aren't good. In certain communities, I'll just use Ramsey, completely tax-based at capacity. That's struggling for new development, and a significant part of its tax base is tax exempt, not paying taxes, meaning that we're over-reliant on homeowners and businesses to pay those costs of government service. The answer is not always just to turn to them and expect more. Frankly, our elected county commissioners are hearing it. a ton of who already can't afford to stay in our homes. The other thing we have going for us is that right now in Ramsey County, SNAP eligibility or Medicaid eligibility, or if you have someone in your family with a disability who's looking to get on Medicaid and get services that they deserve and require, that could be 6 to 7 months. The process that we've been told that we should get to is a month. And Ramsey County just hired 80 new people at the beginning of this year just to try to cut down their caseload right now. So I'm saying this just in context of when you hear us say employee funded, that is an important aspect for why we're coming here, is we want to find something to support, but we also are recognizing the fact that we ourselves have limitations. Mr. Worth mentioned that the disability benefits, we would prefer that that stay within the para general structure. And then past service credit, we're open to discussions. We heard from every single group that past service is important. I think it'd be cheaper to go perspective, but we certainly hear from everyone that that's important. And so we're open to those conversations of how to make that work and how to make it equitable amongst generations. Thanks for the time today.
Jim Mortensen, you're on now.
I am, yes, but I'm driving right now.
Okay. How do you want to go about that? Can you talk while you're driving? Yeah, we'll go to the next one then, and maybe you can get to a spot where you can talk. I guess the next one is the state employers. Yeah, state employers. And that's going to be Paula or Leah.
Good morning, everyone, and Paula Graff. I'm Assistant Commissioner with the Department of Corrections, and with me is Leah Palmer. She's from Public Safety. So I'm going to let Leah start with our presentation. You've got it pulled up there. And so.
Thanks, Paula. I'm the Division Director for the Emergency Communication Networks. What my division does is we're responsible statutorily for the technology network that works to get your phone connected to the correct PSAP for processing that. So my division does not oversee any telecommunicators. However, within the Department of Public Safety, the State Patrol does have a dispatch center or PSAP, safety answering point. And so that is what I'm here to discuss today. So just a little bit of an overview. Oh, back a slide, sorry. A little bit of an overview of the State Patrol Emergency Communications. They fall within the State Patrol structure. Major Scott answers to the Lieutenant Colonel. Lieutenant Colonel answers to the Colonel. So they're right there in the mix. However, they are non-sworn employees. So much like the employees that DAR is talking about at the local county level, these are state PSTs. They're a slightly different job name, but fall under the exact same job duties, hours, all of those things that DAR has been representing. So there's a director, there's 2 PSAPs, one in Rochester and one in Roseville. And I think this is important to point out that they are responsible for the entire state within those 2 locations. So quite a bit of work. There's supervisors, and then there are radio control supervisors, RCSs, and then radio control operators who are the equivalent to a PST. Next slide. Again, the Emergency Communication Center for the State Patrol, they also dispatch for DNR conservation officers, alcohol and gambling enforcement agents, the Department of Corrections fugitive apprehension, as well as adult supervision, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So they have quite a broad scope of duties. So currently there are 70 eligible employees that fall into these ranks for radio control supervisor and radio control operator. So the position description for a radio control operator is to receive and process those 911 calls, texts, and administrative calls from the public on emergency numbers, answer all radio traffic, do those driver's license checks, vehicle checks, handle criminal information exchanges. They provide those interagency communications during mutual aid. A lot of times the State Patrol is the incident commander for presidential visits, protests, high-profile sporting events like the Final Four, et cetera. They are really that ground zero of all public safety communications. RCSs, there's currently 11, so we're looking at a very small number of state employees that fall within this category. They are supervisors. They make sure that the day-to-day operations are handled, but they also ensure that legal requirements are followed, particularly with criminal justice information, that there's adequate staffing. They will fill those RCO positions as needed, which happens because of short staffing or people call off, things like that. So they're doing the same job as the RCO with the addition of supervising employees. That's the overview. I'll hand it over to Paula now to talk about her division, her department. Excuse me.
There we go. So, thank you. Yeah, so, could you go to the next slide, please? And Nicole and Tammy Jo kind of touched on this already, but one of the things that, I've been with the DOC now for a little over a year. And one of the things that is rather complex about our agency is the way that these communities supervision is delivered in our state. It's rather unique, and I have been told that it's confusing. So I just wanted to take a moment to articulate what the differences are. So you've got the CCA, or Community Corrections, which are 36 counties that operate under this structure. So they're responsible for the supervision of felony, supervised release, misdemeanor, and juvenile supervision within the county. Then we have the county probation officers who are responsible for supervision, misdemeanor, and juvenile probation in the county. And 21 counties currently operate under this structure. And then the rest falls to the Minnesota Department of Corrections. And guys, if I got that wrong, please make sure you correct me, because I'm a novice in this particular area. But the DOC is responsible for felony supervision in those CPO counties, or for supervision of felony supervised release, which are those folks released from prison, misdemeanor, and juvenile supervision within the county when the county contracts for the full service. There are 21 counties that operate under this joint CPO DOC supervision, and 30 counties that contract with DOC for all of the supervision services. So that's kind of the construct that the DOC operates under. So if you go to the next slide, you can see our organizational structure. Kelly Mitchell is our assistant commissioner, and so she's over community services and reentry services, and that particular division has 5 subsets of it, which is risk assessment and community notification, family supports, field services, which is where all of our corrections agents work in, but not all of them. Then we have a hearings and release unit who deals with issues that are in this population. So if there's some sort of infraction that occurs, be it on probation, or whatever the case may be, those folks are hearing and meeting with incarcerated or formerly incarcerated to make assessments as to continued sentencing. And then lastly, reentry. And so if we go to the next slide, I've got just a brief overview of what the different divisions do. So field services, there are adult felony probation and supervised release supervisors in those counties. And so some of the duties that are there, we've also got that risk assessment, community notification. So if there's folks that we need to notify the public with respect to community notification, that is some of their responsibilities. We also have responsibilities for specific victim notification. So folks have to be notified via Minnesota Haven, which is our system that we utilize to track down victims. And sometimes that's not easy to find folks that have been impacted by violence or other crime to track those folks down. So if you go on to the next slide, then you'll see what the other 3 subdivisions do within this particular division of DOC. Hearings and release, I already talked about that. reentry services. So they see all of the transitional reentry services. So, homelessness, ICWC, helping to stabilize folks as they are entering into the community. And then lastly, family support. So they are there to help support. And because one of the leading indicators in success post-incarceration is participation by family members. So it's really important to have those folks engaged. So I just wanted to add this because I hope this gives a flavor of what kind of work, and we have so many titles at the TOC that it's super squishy really fast for us. And I know you guys talked about, forensic services, having a comprehensive listing of job titles. The same is true for us. So when Matt was talking about legislative intent and needing to be clear about what it is that we're trying to succeed here, that would be uber important to us, because I have virtually 100% of my employees that work with formerly incarcerated or incarcerated folks. So this becomes a huge concern about what that impact is going to be to our budget. So that's a big concern for us. So if you go on to the next slide. This is briefly, I just pulled the corrections agent position description, some of the responsibilities that we have of those folks that are in these roles. And of course, they're extremely important in the work that they do. Our staff is tremendous, but there's 282 incumbents in this particular title, which is corrections agent career, and corrections agent senior. There's their duties. As I said, are concerned, and it's unclear whether DOC titles would be considered for inclusion as we talk about a proposed extension. But of course, that is a big concern for us. Moving on to the next slide. There was a work group, and Susan mentioned this already. We did this last year as part of CERP. We just did some cleanup of that statute, which was quite extensive, let me tell you. And there are 139 job titles in the CERP statute. And we had to go through and make sure that that was up to date. And so that involved running lists of all of those different job classifications to determine whether there was an incumbent in them or not. And this wasn't just DOC, this was also DHS was sitting at the table. I'm sorry, there was another agency sitting there as well, but it wasn't an easy exercise. And it is really messy. And I will tell you, as a former HR director, that it's really burdensome to HR to have to assess 75% participation with IPs and doing that on an individual basis. So for example, we have, let's say it's a carpenter and they're in a facility, say they're at Stowe, and they happen to work with incarcerated persons. So we might have one carpenter in our entire system that works with an incarcerated enough to qualify for CERP. So they then get looped into this. So it is really onerous, and I want you all to keep that in mind. So if CERP is the model, and this might be 2.0, I pray for my HR director friends, because it really is very burdensome. So I just wanted to point that out. And this slide talks about like some of those job classifications that can be found in that statute. And we did just review it, and I think probation officer did come up as part of that. And it was determined that they didn't meet that statute specifically because they are in a facility. Next slide. So together, Leah and I, we represent the financial and administrative oversight interests from the employer perspective. We, of course, are a little bit unique here because we're sitting on the MSRS side. So our population, if you just consider probation officer and telecommunicator, is small. But if we start to look larger at more titles, it becomes a little bit bigger. And so we would, if this becomes a reality, we would advocate for a sub-plan of the general plan, because it doesn't really make sense to have 300 people in their own pension. I do not believe that is a sustainable kind of thing. Much like I think you were telling me fire marshals and the other sub-plans that are part of the general plan. So our goal would be to ensure that any new pension plan is cost effective, legally sound, and limited to those job classifications that demonstrate meet the statutory threshold. And be it elevated risk, physical demand, workplace stressors, or what is the purpose? What are we trying to achieve here? And I think I've already talked about that fact that the DOC in particular were a little bit different from DPS in the sense that we have this wide myriad of job classifications, which could be potentially impacted. So moving on to the next slide. And we have please turn to very good. Okay. So what are the important or noteworthy perspectives the work should consider? And we are not monolithic for needs. You know, you talked about telecommunicators, and I know that I used to work for Washington County. Turnover was something like 28%. And it was really high. And so you didn't get folks to be career telecommunicators. So Matt, your point about having kind of almost a very divergent populations, like what is the purpose of that? Are we trying to retain? Are we trying to get them to retirement? Because our concern is that they're, you know, the crickety stairs when you're in your 60s. Is that the purpose? And that is a primary concern as well. I've already talked about the number of job classifications that we have, and we're concerned that, you know, once the precedent for early retirement eligibility is established, we are going to have a lot of folks that are raising their hand, and we need to be clear as to the why behind and what is the reason that we decided to do what we're doing. So the highest priorities, of course, protecting the integrity of the retirement system, making sure that they're used for the roles that absolutely require early retirement due to physical wear, 24/7 shift demand. You know, shift work is super demanding. I've never had to do that. Closest I ever got was COVID, right? When we were like, things were crazy. But I have never had to work shift work. I was married to I'm married to former law enforcement. So I know as a family member, what impact that has on family life. So I don't discount it at all. It's really hard to work shifts and to have overnights and to be gone Christmases and holidays. And I really do acknowledge that that's very challenging. One other thing that I just wanted to bring up, the 2.2 is the same as the correctional officer's plan. Nobody's mentioned that the general plan just went to 1.9%. So on the state side, so we have either 2.0 or 2.1, like somewhere in the middle. I feel like the correctional officers and the amount of the challenges and assaults and other like physical interactions that they have as part of their duties might merit more of a benefit there, but that's perhaps just because of where I'm sitting today in my agency. So perhaps it could be something less for that benefit formula. Or maybe it's a longer vesting period, or maybe it's a shorter vesting period. I just like, what's the why and who are we trying to satisfy? So guardrails and scope control obviously is a concern. And I just didn't want to articulate as human resources person, you know, retention, recruitment. We have done lots of different kinds of things in this space. And is it a recruitment incentive? Is it higher compensation? You know, Matt talked about the fact that a lot of today's folks as they're coming into the workforce are more concerned about what they're getting home, like their paycheck when they take it home. And that's real. And so is there a way, if we're trying to retain people or recruit them or keep them or early retirement, is there some other mechanism that could be utilized via HR or some other opportunity there that we might creatively explore? Okay, so information, defining the positions that are eligible, full cost modeling. I think a lot of this has already been said before. I know that probation officers, when they first proposed this, they said, you know, this would be all employee funded. Concern there would be is that we all know that after you run the plan for a little while, those actuarial needs change, and oftentimes the bulk will call them to the employer to pick up the balance of that contribution, and that would also be a concern. So some sort of stress testing, what happens? I don't know if there's a bubble, if the bubble of all the people leaving or what those demographics are looking like. But is there a way that we could take some of that information and plug it into our models as we're doing those assessments? Yeah, I think most people have already been touched on some of these things. But moving on to the last example path. So defining the legislative intent and the purpose of the proposed plan, you know, being super clear about that. Hoping that we wouldn't necessarily get into maybe a server 2.0. I think, and I need to stop myself because I do want to just say one more thing because I missed something. Matt talked about what's happening at Ramsey County. What I just want to say right now at the Department of Corrections, we are closing Stillwater Prison. $20 million cut that we are taking this fiscal year. We are on the cusp of laying off hundreds of people. So for us, the DOC, this is a really challenging time. There are people that are very emotional, myself included, because I've seen what this is doing to our staff people. And so I just want you to be aware that there is a real timing concern here, that our budget is under stress. And I don't anticipate that to change for a biennium or two. And so I want you to be aware that this will be a real burden to our agency. So unless it comes with money, and it's going to really create problems. Okay, so then back to step 3, run the full fiscal impact, lead actuarial budgetary analysis, establish a high barrier to entry, so it's not a slippery slope, and anyone who says their job is hard gets included, and just a narrow and controlled recommendation, which is grounded in fiscal reality, legally defensible, and operationally necessary. So, Leah, do you have anything else?
I think you covered it really well. Just to add, I did serve 2 years as a telecommunicator. Dar was my supervisor. Honestly, it was 23 years ago, which is funny because I'm only 23 years old. So, I know, right? It was really bizarre. So I definitely appreciate the job is what I'm saying. Like, I know how hard it is to sit. I did the shift work, you know, as the young person on the, you know, staff. You're the one picking up the holidays. You're the one picking up the Wednesday, Tuesday days off instead of the weekends, all that stuff. So I just want to say that I do appreciate the job. You know, and now from where I am in my career working for the state, I also just need to be cognizant of the things that Paula pointed out. You know, I think both of us appreciate the work that our staff do. Period. Full stop. Right. There's considerations that go along with it.
Great. Jim Mortensen, are you in a better spot to talk?
Just about logging into my desk, but I don't know where we're at in the presentations. But I did Dar do the presentation for the 911 folks?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, we worked on that together, so I don't think I have anything else to add to that.
Okay, and we will go on to Doug Anderson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate all the presentations so far. I'm Doug Anderson, Executive Director for HERA. Amy Strange, our policy coordinator, will jump in when needed to help clarify anything I have to say. Here is a state agency with an asterisk, I guess. We have a few things that make us unique. One thing in particular is that our funding for operations come from our members, member funds itself, not directly from the states. That's just an example, but essentially a state agency. At HERA, we administer 5 different pension plans: general employees plan, basic fire plan, correctional plan, defined contribution plan for elected officials, and the statewide volunteer fire plan. Over 450,000 members. So our stakeholder groups is our members. And maybe in particular here is that we're talking about members that are in our general plan and not just the members that might be impacted by a new plan, but if members move out of the general plan, we have to be mindful of the members already in the general plan and that there's no adverse impact to that group as well. We're governed by an 11-member board. It includes the state auditor and it includes trustees that represent both employee groups and employer groups. So anytime HERA is considering an issue, we try to be very balanced between employees and employers. Our trustees and myself as the director are fiduciaries of the plan. We have many responsibilities related to being a fiduciary, but the responsibilities are owed to active members, deferred members, retired members, the taxpayers, employers, and the state of Minnesota established the plan. So we have that obligation to all of them to consider all issues. And so ideally, for us, anything that our board considers, really, we want the employees and the employers to be, that's what we want, and that's what our board is always going to be asking us to help try to accomplish. On from there are important perspectives and highest priorities, and kind of combine these. I think it's really important for everyone to know that pension plans are a form of deferred compensation. Member provides a service to the community. Community provides compensation to the member. It comes in the form of pay, and it comes in the form of benefits. Pension plan is a benefit that is a deferred compensation. It's paid later on. I think that's a very important thing. The plan is subject to IRS rules and regulations. The rules and regulations have a lot to do with an orderly form of claim. There's rules about eligibility, vesting, how benefits accrue, early retirement ages, normal retirement ages, ancillary benefits like disability benefits, death benefits, termination benefits. There's a lot of rules and regulations. We are working within a box that we have to stay within. And we want to stay true to that concept that it's a form of deferred compensation. And with that, pre-funding is an important part of that approach. Pre-funding means that when the member provides services, the taxpayers compensate for those services, the current taxpayers are paying for their current services, not prior services. So that's important, and that's why a plan should be pre-funded. The contributions made by the members and the employers that are contributed over the working lifetime of each member should accumulate to what's needed to pay for the benefits for that member. So these are important concepts that we want everyone to keep in mind. And a lot of that relates to past service. So, past service is something I know we'll talk more in depth about that. Past service is an example of if that's granted, it's not necessarily a pre-funded benefit. It's a shifting of cost from one generation to another. Information that we need to make decisions. First of all, we need to make sure that the eligibility group is clearly defined. We view that, that's not Kara's role, that's the legislature's role. We don't want to be making those judgment calls. That's going to need to be important about who becomes eligible. Consistent with what I started talking about is that we want the employee and the employer groups to agree on the benefits and the costs. And on the cost, we want to make sure they're not both agree. They can agree on the cost, but the costs also have to be sufficient. So they can't both agree to pay something that's not sufficient. We need the plan to have long-term sustainability. What that means there too is that we want to do our best that each generation is paying for the right amount. No one's paying more or less than what they should. We want to make sure everything complies with IRS regulations. And then PARA has what we call long-term positions, and we provided a document at our previous meeting, and that's just some of the beliefs that the PARA board has in general. Intergenerational equity is an example of one that they talked about. So those are all important. We do not have a predetermined opinion about what the right multiplier is. Full retirement, early retirement, really we don't come into this with specific idea about what the result should be. We just want to make sure there could be some type of agreement. And then the ideal path for the work group to follow. I think I'm really re-emphasizing a few things here. Understanding the pre-funding, that's important to ensure the intergenerational equity. Make sure everyone understands that the benefits are very valuable. It takes a full career, significant contributions to fund the existing balance. So any increase that happens, if it's significant and valuable to you, it's going to cost quite a bit. I'll touch on that a little bit. Another part of the agenda. Also just want you to understand that similar benefits may cost more, type of more or less to different groups. This goes back to the assumptions. Is that I want to caution against that. For example, you may see that in our correctional plan, there's a set of benefits, multipliers, retirement ages, and there's a cost that's been established. That cost has been established by our actuary based on assumptions, but those are assumptions unique to that group. So any other group that may want similar benefits to that group may not have the same cost because they are two reasons. One is they may look differently. They may have different current existing different age and service demographics, but also different assumptions may apply that may make that same benefits more or less costly. So be open-minded about that. And the last one is I would want everyone to be open-minded about solutions at this point. We're early in a plan design process. We're really very early about what needs to be done. And there's a lot of options, a lot of variables. Amy, is anything that
The only thing I'd add to about being, flexible and open-minded about possible solutions is also really striving to get that education that we need before we can go on and make decisions of how things operate. I think that there are a lot of ideas at play, but I think we need to take a step back and make sure that we all understand what income replacement ratios are and what we are striving for before we put things back in place.
Good afternoon, I get to go last. So a lot of things have been said, but I'll wait till this pulls this up. But I'd also like to just mention the kind of our governance structure. It's very similar to PERA. We have an 11-member board of directors. We have elected individuals from various plans, for our state control plan, correctional plan, and have representation on our board. We have retirees, appointees, and then M&B officers. So that's how our structure works. We also have 5 plans. So our general plan is our largest. As mentioned, we are 100% funded. and we're able to provide a benefit improvement to those groups in that plan. So we have a multiplier 1.9, which these individuals we're discussing are in that plan today. Functional plan has also been mentioned. So that plan has long history. So each plan is unique and individual and has a different history. And so you'll have to forgive me because I will frequently reference other plans and their experience. And in total, we have about $36 billion in assets. So lots of responsibility. We do have the same fiduciary standard as ERA, and our board takes that very seriously. We have some differences in how our boards operate, but generally the same. We go to the next slide. This just shows a breakdown of the membership in the various plans. So lots of folks in our general plan, that's our largest. I'm going to talk a little bit about correctional plan just because it's going to come up. So it's been mentioned that that plan was expanded just from correctional officers to other types of employees that work in the facilities. They have to have that 75% contact. It is very labor intensive, both from the HR perspective and the MSRS eligibility perspective, because we have to interact a lot with HR folks. The other thing I would say is in the 90s, when they expanded that eligibility, they did offer past service at a reduced rate. They did not pay the full actuarial cost of that past service. And it has forever impacted the funding status of that. So any sort of past service needs to be fully funded from an actuarial perspective, because right now the state is contributing an extra 4.45% to pay to help offset some of those decisions that were made in the 1990s. So I just want you all to have that because you'll hear us talk about actuarial costs and how it needs to be fully funded. So that's an example of that. The other plan, Doug mentioned pre-funding and how important that is. So our judges' retirement plan is our smallest plan. It's also most volatile because of the size. So we want to keep that in mind with the size of the plans. That plan was not pre-funded until 1992. So that means that it was pay as you go. When judges retired, the state would transfer money, and that's how we would pay the benefits. In 1992, the legislature had some foresight, started pre-funding that, but the funding status of that plan is in the high 60s, 60% now. Getting close to 70, getting up there, it's very exciting. But it's taken that long to get up to that level. And so any sort of plan you establish, you want to make sure it's pre-funded, funded appropriately, so we don't have those past experiences repeat themselves. And noteworthy considerations and priorities. So the priorities for MSRS are in bold, but I kind of lumped everything together. As others have mentioned, job classifications are really important. So the state does have specific job codes. That's how we determine eligibility today. We want to make sure we identify the appropriate job codes. The size of the population has been mentioned. So it's a very small group of people that are in these classifications for the state. Small plans are more volatile and vulnerable to negative experience. So if you have a bad investment year, if you have longer life expectancies than you planned, those small plans, they're more vulnerable when they have those negative experiences, which means they cost more once those experiences are reflected. Our preference is a top plan because of the size of this group. So that is our preference. We've used this in the past, fire marshals and military affairs. So there's a link in the embedded to a chart that we did last time and kind of explaining the sub-plans to you all. This also would allow potentially if you didn't want one plan, if 911 telecommunicators wanted kind of a set of benefits and the probation or corrections agents wanted a benefit was slightly different, it would allow them to kind of do some variations. The one thing that I would caution is we want to make sure that it's not an election to join the sub-plan and that it's required. We've had some issues where people forgot to elect or weren't notified, and then we're going to have to seek legislation to get them in right. So mandatory participation there. Next, additional considerations. So some folks have already talked about like benefit features. So there's lots of components in a benefit structure, benefit design. The multiplier is 1, the full retirement age, normal retirement age, early retirement age. Is it just based on age? Is it 10 years, age plus years? Is it age 4 years? Those are all decisions that will have to be made. What is the reduction for early retirement? We would generally support a full actuarial reduction. If you do retire early from the full retirement age, because then it's paid for and other plan members aren't subsidizing that early retirement. The vesting period, the disability benefit and the type of disability benefit. There has been a lot of discussion about post-retirement increases, but that is an expensive component of a plan. So that's something we want to consider. And then what is the reasonable amount for employers to pay relative to the benefits? So all of those things are in consideration. Priority for MSRS and bold, funding for any benefits must be paid for by the group receiving the enhancement. So we're neutral on the source of funding, but the employees should pay a portion of the funding that reflects the level of benefit that they're receiving, and intergenerational equity. You hear that a lot about making sure that I'm paying for my benefit today, that I will earn and get paid hopefully in the future, and every other employee should do the same. Benefit changes must reflect the appropriate amortization policy. So we want to make sure it's paid for the amortization period reflected in the benefit, generally 15 years. A little different from here, the MS report doesn't have a planning policy or position on any new plan. Generally, what we do every year is we develop our legislative agenda in our September and November meetings, and then move forward with that. So the timing is going to be important to get the MSRS board position on whatever the script is. So moving forward, as I just mentioned, we want to make sure to bring this by November 20th to our board to get their thoughts and position on this. So we potentially integrate it into our legislative priorities. I think we all hopefully can come to a common goal of intergenerational equity and making sure that we keep that top of mind. And then I hope we all can identify the funding, whatever is decided, and determine the funding is available, because the plans, other plan members should not absorb the cost of the benefit from one group of employees.
Covered everybody. For the presentations. We need to prepare combined service and duties.
Okay, I know what really is. Okay, I'm gonna talk about combined service annuities. This has been a topic that I think some education on is going to be really good for this group. The purpose of combined service is to really allow portability within not only changing employers within the state or local governments, but also if you change plans within para. So example, if you are in para general and you would move up to para police fire, this would impact you as well. So it's really important for us to have this combined service, and it also impacts plans across the system or the state. So TRA is impacted, MSRS is impacted by this as well. Essentially what it does is it allows for a portability feature that ensures that there's no loss of benefits when members do change employer or plans. There are, it's important to note a few things. There are no contributions that are transferred between the plans. So any contributions you made to the general plan stay in the general plan, or MSRS, the contributions stay where it is. Your service credits, so your years of service are combined together to for vesting purposes. And this means that let's say for MSRS, our para general right now, it's a 3-year vesting period, right? And then para PNF has different vesting. So if your years of service combined together with your jobs in state employment and local employment combined meet the vesting requirements in the PNF plan, you are vested in that plan. And then it's also important to note that benefits are calculated separately and paid separately. So you receive a check from both MSRS and PARA, for example. To qualify for CSA, you must reach a couple eligibility requirements. The first is that you have to reach an eligible retirement age. You have to have at least 6 months of service in each plan. So if you have the general plan, you've had 6 months of service in there. And let's say MSRS general, for purposes of this conversation right now, you have a year, you would qualify. And what you also have to do is your years of service again have to cumulatively meet that vesting requirement for each plan. You have to terminate public service and have your benefit effective dates within 1 year of each other. Any questions? I'm actually going to stop and take questions on each section. I think that might be more helpful. So any questions so far on our eligibility requirements for a CSA benefit?
Do you have to reach your eligible retirement age in each one?
No, correct me if I'm wrong, Erin, it has to be one of them. But then the other ones would be reduced accordingly. So let's say we have members in our fair general plan that when you are a police officer, you are in training first and you're in the general plan, and then you move over to the police and fire plan. They are eligible for a CSA benefit because they've had 6 months of service in the general plan. What often happens at 55, they can retire with the police and fire benefits. Then there are reductions that are impacted for the general plan benefit because that retirement age is 66. You can take both of them. You have to take them within 12 months of each other to be eligible for a combined service.
To me, then the answer is yes, you don't qualify for the one because that has a higher retirement age. You only qualify.
You can't take both. It's just going to be reduced. Yeah.
Who wants reduced? Yes, I get it.
But I think it's important to note that the benefit, so in that example, you're likely making more at the end of your career than picking up again. So that high-five salary is used to calculate the general plan. So even though it's reduced, you're getting more value with the combined service because you're able to use the high-five.
On the vesting, the PNF has a incremental vesting that does fractional, so you just have to get to the first section. You just have to go to 50%.
Move on to benefits, because I think, Erin said, the benefits do, they work together in a way that often for our members in this circumstance that do see reductions in their general plan benefit, because you are using your highest high-five at the end of your career, it often does offset some of those reductions that exist, and you often are getting more than what you would have. I have examples later on in the presentation to kind of illustrate that too. So when we determine your CSA benefit, we are using, again, your combined service for vesting eligibility. Each benefit is going to be calculated on your highest high-five. So if it's an MSRS general, PARA will take that high-five, apply it to the 1.7 multiplier. If reductions are necessary, reductions occur, and you get your benefit that way. Each plan uses its own formula and own service to calculate the benefit. But again, you are using that high-five, which is very impactful in this benefit. The CSA benefit provides flexibility for another set of options, right? Because you have your benefit that's going to be calculated differently, but you also have the option, since it's two different benefits being paid out, you have different benefit selections that you can make. So for example, you could choose a single life benefit for the PARA benefit and choose a survivor option for the other benefit. So it provides you flexibility there, which is significant. It also allows you to directly deposit into different banks if you want to, and also tax withholdings can be taken as well. Another option I want to highlight though is this coverage by more than 1 month. So you will often hear us talk about CSA coverage, and that CSA coverage, again, taking a step back, is that we're using all your vesting service to vest you in this plan. We're also using your high-five to do the calculation. For coverage by more than one fund, we are still using your vesting to vest you in this new plan or whatever plan. We are not using your high five though. You're using the high five that is applicable to that plan. And you do not have to take the benefits within 12 months of each other. So you can defer. So you can take a benefit at the age of 60, for example, and wait to collect your general plan benefit until the age of 66 and have no reductions. So this one provides you more flexibility in the timing of when you take your benefits. It doesn't give you the high five, but again, depending on where you are in your career, that high five may not be relevant to the situation. And when we are working with members that do have multiple service and different plans, we do show them the options that what may be best for them. So we do provide you with this information as you are making your retirement decisions. Can you explain what salary then is used? It's whatever was in the plan. So like if you left, so let's say for this new plan, you had 20 years in the new plan. And that's your salary. Like, so whatever high five salary was in that plan, that's the salary that we're going to use to determine that benefit. In the new plan, we're going to use your high five salary in the new plan to determine that. It could be different.
I think you meant the whole plan first.
I meant the old plan, yeah, thank you.
So I think if you have 20 years in the whole plan and you choose to combine the coverage by more than one fund option, the salary used for that calculation would be in that plan. And then your new plan will have a separate salary calculation. So you could collect it 2 times.
You say coverage by more than one fund. Does that mean MSRS versus para, or does that mean just the buckets in MSRS?
Plans.
Okay. But a general sub-plan, that's if you went, let's say, from the general plan and now you create a sub-plan of probation, you'd still be in the same plan.
Correct. Yeah, so that wouldn't apply if it's a sub-plan. But if you had correction in general, you could apply.
And this is an election.
It's a calculation that's done by our staff, and we tell you which one gives you most.
Yeah, we like
most money.
yeah. When you are making your retirement decisions, we have excellent staff that walk you through your options and what impact it is and how it would play out on either. So you could be given both of these like options of which one and if you can choose. I do have some examples to show with the with numbers, and I think that is helpful. My first example is just with MSRS and para. And I'll note that for this benefit, this member is age 66, their service is 25 years, for MSRS, 5 years for para. Their average salary for MSRS was 7,000 and their para average salary was 4,000. So in this example of combined service annuity, the MSRS benefit calculation is the multiplier 1.7, it should be updated to 1.9. 25 years of service gives you a monthly benefit of $2,975. For the para purposes, you'll see that the high five is applied here, and that CSA benefit is $595. If CSA wasn't an option, that benefit would be $340. So it's an increase of $255 by using the CSA to calculate this benefit. The other option I have is if we look at this potential new plan using the study that we looked at, we have a member who is age 60. They have in the general plan service 10 years. The new plan, they have 20 years of service. Their general average salary is 5,000. Their new plan average is 7,000. When you're looking at the para general calculation, you have a CSA benefit of $689. With the new plan, you have a benefit of $3,080. And the difference of not using CSA for the para general plan calculation would be $492. So it's $197 less than using CSA. Even with the reductions that exist in this for the early retirement reductions for the general plan. Any questions on how these calculations are operating or any questions about coverage or CSA? the last thing I'll say about them is they are great portability options that allow us to provide an ability for members to move within plans and to not have any losses because of that. If not, I'm gonna turn it over to Doug, and he's gonna talk about income replacement ratios and how this kind of plays in the conversation.
Ask the chair a question, is there a hard stop at 3 o'clock?
How long do you think you're taking?
7 minutes.
You're flexible.
Tailor it to target.
Yeah, no, I think.
So I want to take this opportunity to kind of introduce a tool that's really commonly used with pension plan design. And especially when building a plan from scratch, it's used. So here we're talking about one plan to another. This is sometimes helpful for that discussion. It's called a replacement ratio, and it's comparing the income after retirement compared to the income before retirement. And this is, sometimes it's done on a pre-tax basis, sometimes after tax, but it's kind of a simple tool to see what a plan provides and whether it's sufficient to meet income replacement goals. So a replacement ratio, part of it is easy. Like in our general plan, we have at para, we have a 1.7% multiplier after all years of service. So if a member starts their career at 26, puts in 40 years, retires at 66, the full retirement age, at a 1.7% multiplier, they'll get 68% of their average salary. So close to 68% of their pay. That's the replacement. 68% of the pay that they were getting right before retirement. Many years ago, 100 years ago, it was common for pension plans to be a 2% multiplier for all years of service. That was not uncommon. And then Social Security came along. And plans became coordinated with Social Security. So our plan, sometimes we call it the general plan. That's our technical name, the general employee retirement plan. We have to call it the coordinated plan because it's coordinated with Social Security. That time the multiplier was reduced because it doesn't have to do the whole job. Social Security does part of the job. For a typical, probably for an average para member, Social Security would provide about 30% of their final pay.
Until 2030.
Until 2033. We'll see there. Good point. Now Social Security this is an average. Social Security got what's called a progressive formula. The replacement income at lower income levels is higher than replacement income at higher income levels for Social Security. It's just how the formula works. They don't have a strict formula. It's a high percentage at low income and so forth. So for our members who are on the lower end of income, and for para, we have really kind of two big groups of members. One is the school employees who are not teachers. Cafeteria workers, bus drivers, or that's one kind of group. And then we have a group that's more, career, full-time career city and county employees. So we might have a bigger range on the Social Security replacement income from 20% to 40%. It's just math. So if you have a full career, you're getting close to 100% of your pay. Obviously, if you don't put in a full career, you won't be at 100%, but it also means you probably work somewhere else, hopefully accrued a benefit somewhere else, or accumulated one in a 401k or something. So if we go to the next page, this is what it looks like over time. So this is the general plan member starts at 25, works to 66, starts their full benefit, and then waits another year to start their Social Security benefit at the full Social Security retirement age. They'd be above 70% in the first year of retirement, close to 100% after that. And then you may notice over time, there's a bit of a decline. That's because the para benefit isn't fully inflation protected. These calculations assume in long-term inflation is 2.25%. That plan provides 1.75. So there's a little erosion of purchasing power on the para piece. But social security benefit is fully inflation. That's why that doesn't drop off. Now, the recommended ratio, that's very subjective. Financial planners will give you anything from 70 to 90. It's going to vary from person to person, but there's a reason it's usually around 80. It's because things happen at that point of your life. And when you retire, you don't have the same expenses. Two really big ones is when you retire, you don't pay para 6.5% of pay. You don't pay Social Security 6.2% of pay. You have Medicare coverage. You don't have health costs. Maybe Matt's daycare expenses will be done by the time your home may be paid off. So generally, that's why you'll see a recommended amount that's not what it is. You don't need 100%. So looking at this slide, what would appear to everyone would be the gap here is what the plan doesn't provide prior to 60. On the next page is if in the general plan, existing general plan, if a member retires early at 62, the benefit is reduced for early retirement because it's paid out for a longer period. The member hasn't contributed as long, the employer hasn't contributed as long. Payments paid out for a longer period, it's equally as valuable to the member. It's a smaller amount, but for a longer period, but it's a smaller amount. Same with Social Security. If you start that earlier, a smaller amount, yes, but it's paid for a longer period. It's called actuarial equivalent. Now, in this case, the plan would be short of that recommended amount. That's if the goal from the member, the individual is to have that kind of income, they'd have to supplement it from their deferred comp or any other part-time work. Those are basics. So now talking about how does the transition work? And I think that was the goal from one of the groups too, is like, how does this transition work? And so there's some examples here of, okay, well, if a new plan is put in place, and in this place, for this exhibit, we're talking about if the new plan has a 2.2% multiplier, and it's unreduced at age 60. Now they would have a component of their benefit is from the general plan. It's 30 years from the general plan, reduced for early commencement. They'd have a component from the new plan, not reduced for early commencement. And then they could take Social Security at 62, since the goal is to retire earlier. That's reduced for early commencement. And these are how the pieces stack up and what the new plan would do and how it would impact someone who would have 30 years under the existing plan and 5 under the new. So this is someone 5 years away from age 60. And then on the next page is, I think that may have jumped one, we can go back one. Same concept, just a different. This is someone who's got 15 years in to the general plan, 20 years under the new plan. And here you can see, well, now the new plan at the higher multiplier fills that gap. Once Social Security can commence, it doesn't quite on early years. What I would note here is what's not covered, what doesn't go away until 65 is the healthcare. Kick into 65. And then on the next page would be, this is after the new plan is fully implemented. So plan goes into effect now. Someone has 35 years under the new plan, add a 2.2% multiplier, unreduced at age 60. That benefit plus social security would be close to 100% over what's recommended, the subjective recommended amount. And that's not one. So a potential conclusion there would be to question whether the 2.2% multiplier is really what's needed, or a 1.7% multiplier, which comes back to a big question for the group is, how much does someone want to pay of their own employee contributions or for employer contributions that are going for benefits during their career to achieve a higher level of income at a later year? Do you really want to have a lesser income before retirement in order to get more income after retirement? That's kind of a philosophical question about how you set some of these numbers. So that's a tool. I think that it's, I hope it's helpful as we refine where this plan is going. Maybe this would be helpful to revisit some of the plan to take questions.
Doug, I have one question. Is there ever been a plan, or is it possible, and please HR people don't look at me, where there's a group of people who are going to be exiting sooner and they are willing to pay a higher rate while the other members pay a standard rate?
For para, so different, really different. We haven't had different rates for different.
Right, understanding that, like, say if I go versus a young agent, I would be paying more because I would want that fund to have more in it. And I understand that a younger agent maybe doesn't need to pay as much as I do. Has that ever occurred?
Is it always a different rate of purchase?
Correct.
I mean, deferred comp is the way to do that, right? So like if you are potentially wanting to retire early, right? And the thing that the income replacement ratios don't have right now is any savings, and right, you kind of have a three stool, right? You have your social security, you have your pension, and then personal savings. The income replacement ratios don't include that information, right? So in theory, if you did want to retire early, you could put more money into a deferred comp situation to cover that gap, right? So I think that an option there would be put more money in your deferred comp versus like a new plan setting.
Right. I just was curious if any pension plan had ever had that makeup.
Our judges has two different rates, but it's because the more hired judges are receiving more benefits. So it's kind of the opposite, where the more senior judges are paying more because they're getting a more generous benefit. Because of their funding situation, we came forward with a reduced benefit for future judges, so they pay less.
So it's kind of possible.
Kind of possible, but it's the opposite direction. So I don't think it, and I don't know if that would contribution if they're getting the same benefit. It's not
Right, yeah,
You couldn't elect as long as it's mandatory. But I mean, the tier 1, tier 2 problem is such a nightmare. It might look good now, but give it 3 years and 80 million people yelling about it. I mean, it's horrible.
Again,
saw
just
that with
tossing it out there as a possible
my gosh,
blundering.
It's just so tough. Yeah.
When we decided the judges, when we defined that new program with its second tier of benefits, we looked at income replacement ratio to determine the most higher that was appropriate in the two. So it can be beneficial.
Nice, good question. Perfect. Do you have graphs similar to this for the other plans, the corrections plan, the law enforcement fire plan, the different thing that show the exact same thing?
Yes.
Could you share those?
That spirit of deferred compensation, of course, the unclassified plan is essentially it's essentially a deferred comp. You don't get, get what you put into that plan, right? And
Sort of.
Rounding your notes.
So depending on, so elected officials are in that plan, they do not have a choice to switch to the general plan. Employees that are in that plan have a window of time to elect general plan coverage, so they can determine if it's better for them to have the defined benefit calculation or if they want to stick with it. With a defined contribution, their account balance at the end is annuitized. And still get monthly benefits from service.
Questions? Right, on over, obviously, we're not gonna get to the DLI, but we'll put that on the agenda for the August 18th. And anything that we didn't get to today. We are gonna do the August 18th at 1 p.m. We'll have the DLI, finish out with para. Rework it, but we're gonna go past service credit purchase. We plan to do a little study and then we'll review the insights by the communities. So. Yes.
If I can note that, the new plan actuarial study is done and it will be presented to our board at the board, meeting on August 14th.
Okay.
Which is a public meeting. So people can join that either in person or virtually, that's an option. We do have limited boardroom space. I would encourage, if you're going to watch, you can watch it virtually. And we do intend to put that early on the agenda. There's a lot of items on the board agenda that day, but we intend to do that early, which would be 9:30, close to 9:30. So you could hear from the actuary of the results. Study.
Highly recommend everybody do that. It might save us a meeting.
The other thing you would say is I was going to give a preview of that, but I'll probably do that for the board. So you can see it there already. It's recorded.
And that actuarial study did include both telecommunicators and probation
Yes, but
officers
then
and also.
like it ain't.
Right, but, for instance, no, okay.
And the study, I think, even if it excludes certain group, the goal of the study is to put the cost in terms of a percent of pay. So it's not really like coming up with a number like it's $1 billion, it's a percent of pay what matters. So if it's not capturing the complete group, that's not going to change the results.
Just tell the group, we can send a meeting invitation for your board meeting. So how do they get into the meeting? Was it WebEx or how do you do that? You register them for it?
Go to meetings, so like we can, it's Microsoft Teams, so you can email, Gwen is sending the email is on our website and she will send you a link to it. If it's in person, again, we have limited capacity, so we'd have to set up like an external room if there's going to be a lot of people and we will need information on that if that is the case. Then you'll be able to watch it. I think then we'd still go over, Bonnie is still going to present the study in the next work.
Last question. The actuarial study, is it based on a certain age?
For retirement, it's based on age 60 for an unreduced. Then the 22% multiplier and the same post-retirement increases.
Thank you.
Are you gonna send out that link so we can all get into that?
So we'll send a meeting invitation to the group and then maybe we can put a link to your
we can,
website, to the para website, the web page
Where you can go in to register. Yeah.
So we'll do.
That'd be great, thanks.
All right, anything else? Thank you, everybody.
Sorry.